You won't believe what my neighbor, the infamous HOA Karen, did this time. Imagine waking up to find metal spike strips lined across your driveway. Yeah, it really happened. She thought she could get away with it, but what she didn't know is that this time, she messed with the wrong person. In today's video, I'm breaking down exactly what happened, how I caught her in the act, and how it all ended with her in handcuffs. From the first red flag to the shocking police moment, it's all here. Stick around. It's a story you're not going to want to miss. And if you enjoyed this one, be sure to click subscribe, because tomorrow, we have another special story for you. I live in a neighborhood where everything looks like it was copy-pasted out of a real estate brochure. White fences, trimmed hedges, cheerful mailboxes, and driveways so clean you could eat off them, though I wouldn't recommend it. It's the kind of place where neighbors wave just a little too long, and the sound of a barking dog after 8 p.m. could spark a community-wide meltdown. You know, Pleasantville, ... With paperwork, and where there's an HOA, there's always that one person who takes it all way too seriously. In our case, her name is Karen. Yes, that's really her name. I couldn't make this up if I tried. Now, don't get me wrong, I get the point of an HOA. They're supposed to keep things tidy, prevent someone from turning their front yard into a used tire showroom, or painting their house neon green. Fine, but Karen, she turned enforcing the rules into her full-time hobby, and I was her favorite target. She first came for my mailbox, said it was a half-inch too tall. I mean, seriously. Then she filed a formal complaint about my garbage bins being visible for 8 whole minutes after pickup. Not even kidding. The woman once wrote a passive-aggressive note about my grass being too expressive. I didn't even know what that meant. Was it too tall? Too ... green. It got to the point where every time I heard the click of her sandals on the sidewalk, I'd get PTSD-FL anxiety. She patrolled the neighborhood like a mall cop with something to prove. Clipboard in hand, sunglasses that screamed "I peaked" in the 90s, and a permanent scowl like she smelled something bad but couldn't figure out what. Now, I tried to be civil. I smiled. I waved. I even trimmed my hedges on a Sunday morning once, but it was never enough. Karen needed control, like a cat needs to knock things off tables. It wasn't about the rules, it was about her rules. And something about me existing on my own property seemed to offend her deeply. Still, life went on. I kept my lawn mowed. I kept my car clean. I kept my head down. I figured, if I stayed out of her way, she'd eventually move on to obsessing over someone else's flower beds. Spoiler alert, she didn't. Things simmered for a while. We had a few awkward run-ins, mostly involving her reminding me of bylaws I'd never heard of, like how Halloween decorations had to be removed within 48 hours, or how garden gnomes were discouraged due to aesthetic disruption. I laughed it off, until one morning, everything changed. But we're not there yet. Let me paint the scene for you. It was a Saturday morning. Birds were chirping. I was sipping coffee in my robe, living my best suburban life. The air smelled like fresh grass and slightly over-roasted Starbucks beans from my neighbor's fancy outdoor espresso setup. Everything felt ... calm. Normal ... to normal. You know in movies when the main character walks into their kitchen, the music gets weirdly quiet, and you just know something bad is coming. That was me, only instead of a masked killer behind the fridge, it was something far worse. HOA Karen with a plan. I didn't know it yet, of course. To me, it was just another weekend. But looking back, there were signs. A suspicious lack of barking from her neurotic Pomeranian, her car parked facing the other direction like she didn't want the license plate seen, and the faintest glint of metal peeking out from the end of my driveway, though I wouldn't notice that until later. That was the last truly peaceful moment. I had 4 weeks, because somewhere in her HOA, Villain Leroy, more likely, her overly air-conditioned living room Karen had decided that if she couldn't intimidate me with fine print, she'd resort to good old-fashioned sabotage. I didn't see it coming. Why would I? I hadn't broken any rules. My bins were hidden, my lawn was obedient, my gnomes were safely in the garage. But as I would soon discover, compliance means nothing to someone who thrives on conflict. So there I was, finishing my coffee, blissfully unaware that just feet away from me, at the edge of my property, danger literally lurked beneath my tires, and all I could think about that morning was whether I had enough eggs to make an omelet. Funny how fast your priorities shift when your neighbor declares war. Stick around. It gets wild. I wish I could tell you I noticed it right away that my inner Sherlock Holmes kicked in the moment I stepped outside. But no, I walked straight over the spike strips without seeing them, humming the Succession theme like I had zero idea I was about to nearly destroy my tires and my sanity. It wasn't until I got into my car, backed up 2 feet, and heard the most horrifying crunch pop hiss sound that I realized something was very, very wrong. At first I thought I'd run over a stray tree branch, or maybe a rogue Amazon box. You'd be surprised what ends up in driveways these days. But when I stepped out and looked down, my stomach dropped. There they were, 2 long rust-colored metal strips with jagged spikes pointing upward like they were auditioning for Mad Max, Suburban warfare. My rear tire was already toast, hissing like a deflating balloon, rim kissing the pavement, rubber mangled. I just stood there, staring, like my brain needed a minute to catch up. I mean, who even owns spike strips? And more importantly, why would they be on my driveway? That's when the anger hit me. Not the slow simmer kind. I'm talking full boil, eye-twitching rage. Because the moment I got past the confusion, it clicked. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't some random prank by bored teens. This had Karen written all over it. The petty, vindictive energy practically radiated off the metal. And you know what the worst part was? The strips were positioned perfectly angled, just so they'd hit my back tires the second I reversed. Not the front, not the middle, the back. Like someone had measured it. Like someone had done it before. Like someone had planned it. So yeah, I saw red. I took pictures. Lots of them. Close-ups. Wide shots. Even one with my busted tire next to the strip for dramatic effect. Just in case I needed to take this to court or start a true crime podcast later. Then I very carefully pried the spike strips off the driveway with a snow shovel and dragged them into my garage like they were evidence in a murder case, which, honestly, felt pretty accurate. I wanted to storm over to Karen's house, right then and there. Hold up the strips, like Simba in The Lion King, and yell, "Explain this." But I paused, because yelling at Karen only ever resulted in 2 things: a smug smile and a passive-aggressive HOA complaint filed under tone of voice. No. If I was going to prove this, I needed more than anger and a flat tire. I needed a plan, so I took a deep breath, ordered a tow truck, and while I waited, I did something I should have done weeks ago. I installed security cameras. Not the cheap, blinking kind that looks like a decoy from a dollar store. No, these were motion-activated, high-def, night vision, having little marvels of justice. I mounted one facing the driveway, one angled toward the side yard, and another pointed right at the spot where the spike strips had been. The whole process took less than an hour, and when I was done, I felt like I'd just leveled up in a video game. Like I was no longer just guy who lives at the end of the street. I was now guy whose single quotes watching you back off Karen. I also made notes, a full-on log. Date, time, tire damage, photos, video setup. I even included the history of HOA nonsense with Karen, just in case this escalated, and, let's be honest, we both know it was going to escalate. The next few days were tense. Every time I heard a car door slam or footsteps outside, I checked the camera feed like I was guarding the crown jewels. I kept the spike strips in my garage, safely tucked under an old beach towel like they were nuclear codes. Karen, for her part, acted like nothing had happened. She waved at me once, smiled. The kind of smile that makes you want to throw a pumpkin through someone's window. But I kept cool. I waved back. Because when you know the game is rigged, you don't flip the board, you record the whole damn thing. And then, on the third night, boom, I got her. It was around 5:12 a.m., according to the timestamp. The sky was still dark. Karen crept across my lawn in a hoodie and slippers like she was auditioning for America's least stealthy criminals. She crouched low, pulled something from inside a tote bag, and placed it carefully, deliberately at the edge of my driveway. 2 long metal strips, the same exact kind. She even looked around, like a cartoon villain checking for meddling kids. Except this time, the kid was a motion-activated HD camera with night vision and a date stamp. I watched the footage 3 times, just to be sure I wasn't hallucinating. It was her, no doubt. Karen had booby-trapped my driveway. Again, now I had evidence. Solid, irrefutable, crime, show-worthy footage. And I wasn't just mad anymore. I was motivated. I didn't touch the new spike strips. I left them exactly where she put them. Then I called the non-emergency police line, calmly explained what happened, and offered to email the footage. The officer on the line paused for a moment and said, "Wait, she did what?" That was when I knew I wasn't overreacting. Within the hour, an officer was on my property, taking statements, snapping photos, and reviewing the footage with an expression that moved from disbelief to disgust. I handed over the log I'd been keeping. He nodded, impressed. "She trespassed, tampered with your property, and placed an intentional hazard," he said. "That's criminal mischief, at the very least. Possibly reckless endangerment. Can I press charges?" I asked. "Absolutely," he said. "And with this video, it's a pretty open and shut case." As he left, I stood in the driveway, watching the sun rise over my now infamous strip of concrete. I felt victorious, yes, but also oddly calm, like I had finally taken my power back. Like all the passive-aggressive emails and mailbox drama had been leading to this exact moment. Karen messed with the wrong neighbor, and she was about to find out. On camera, I couldn't stop replaying the footage. There she was, Karen, across my lawn like she was in some low-budget spy movie, planting spike strips with the precision of someone who'd definitely done it before. It wasn't just sneaky, it was personal, and weirdly kind of theatrical. Like, if she'd thrown down a smoke bomb and disappeared behind a bush, I wouldn't have even been surprised. I sent the video to my email, my cloud, 2 flash drives, and possibly NASA, just to be safe. This was golden. The kind of evidence that doesn't just win arguments, it ends them. I had timestamps, I had close-ups. I even had a weird moment where she tripped on a sprinkler head and cursed under her breath. Instant classic. But here's the part that really got me. She had the nerve to act normal the next morning, like nothing had happened. I watched from my window as she watered her azaleas, adjusting her little garden flag that said, "Welcome, friends," which now felt more like a threat than a greeting. I figured it was time. Not for revenging, not a cartoon villain, but for confrontation, the adult kind. So I grabbed my phone, walked right up to her driveway, and called out, "Morning, Karen." She turned, all fake sunshine and tight smiles. "Good morning," she said, as if she hadn't turned my driveway into a medieval death trap 12 hours earlier. I kept my tone cool, friendly even. "Hey, I noticed some damage to my tire the other day. Turns out, someone left spike strips on my driveway." Her smile wobbled just a little, a flicker, but she recovered fast. "Spike strips," she said, blinking like she didn't know what a spike strip was. "That's strange. Kids these days, right? The kids." Classic scapegoats of suburban crime. Yeah, I said, keeping my voice light. Funny thing though, I installed cameras. That was it. That was the moment. Her whole face shifted, like someone hit the pause button for half a second too long. Her smile froze. Her watering can tilted slightly. It was a glitch in the matrix. I'm sure you'll catch whoever's doing it, she said finally, turning back to her plants. Her tone was breezy, but her hand was shaking just enough to make the water slosh onto her shoes. I nodded. Oh, I already did. Then I walked away. Was it dramatic? Sure. Was it satisfying? Deeply, but I wasn't about to waste time arguing on her turf. I had better plans. Because when you've got undeniable proof and a deeply irritated police officer already on your side, you don't debate. You delivered. Later that day, I went straight to the HOA board. I brought a flash drive and a folder full of printed screenshots, because nothing makes boomers perk up like printed documentation. The president of the board, Greg, retired, golf obsessed, and allergic to conflict, looked like I'd just handed him a live grenade. Karen did what? He said, adjusting his glasses. I calmly walked him through it. The history, the complaints, the spike strips, the footage. He didn't say much. Just watched the video twice, blinking more each time. She trespassed, I said. She sabotaged my property, and she endangered me and anyone else who might have pulled into that driveway. Greg exhaled through his nose like he was blowing out birthday candles he didn't want. We'll have to bring this up at the board meeting, Greg, I said, leaning forward. This isn't a meeting thing. This is a police thing. He nodded slowly, clearly wishing he'd retired somewhere without an HOA, and that's when things really started moving. The next morning, a police officer showed up at Karen's house, not sirens blazing, but official enough that people noticed. I watched from behind my blinds like a nosy sitcom character. Karen came to the door in her pastel robe, all shocked innocence, like she couldn't imagine what this could possibly be about. There was a short conversation. She waved her hands a lot. The officer pointed toward my house, then toward the street. Karen's face tightened. Her mouth moved faster. She stepped outside, probably hoping to diffuse things with her usual flurry of denial and moral superiority. And then the handcuffs came out. Let me tell you, there's a special kind of silence that falls over a neighborhood when the reigning HOA queen gets arrested on her front lawn. Sprinklers stopped mid-cycle. Dogs paused mid-bark. Somewhere, a curtain twitched. It was like the entire street collectively gasped and held its breath. Karen didn't go down without a fight, she argued, loudly. She claimed I'd faked the footage. Said I'd planted the strips myself for attention. Yeah, because nothing says attention-seeking like destroying your own tires and waking up at 5 a.m. to film your neighbor's criminal hobbies. But it didn't matter. The officer had the evidence, the timestamps, the history, and my extremely detailed, extremely polite, written statement. It was enough. They placed her in the car. No perp walk, no sunglasses toss, no law and order sound effect, just quiet humiliation and the unmistakable sound of a door shutting behind her and me. I just stood on my porch with my coffee, watching justice roll by. I didn't wave, but I didn't smile either. I just sipped. A few hours later, Greg from the HOA called me. He sounded like someone who'd just stepped in something unpleasant, barefoot. We're suspending Karen from all HOA duties, he said, like it physically hurt him to admit. Pending further discussion. Great, I said. Maybe remind her that spike strips aren't part of the landscaping code. Silence, then a cough. We'll be updating the bylaws. I hung up, feeling not happy, exactly, but satisfied, like I'd finally shut a door that had been creaking open for way too long. Karen had always acted like the rules didn't apply to her, like she was the final boss of suburban order. But it turns out, Even self-declared queens have to answer to something stronger than power trips and pettiness, proof, and man. It felt good to win. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? Karen hauled off in cuffs, the neighborhood briefly frozen in stunned silence, and me on my porch like a victorious extra in a legal drama. Fade to black, roll credits. But no, this was only the start of the official process. The real justice system had now entered the chat. A day after her arrest, I got a call from the precinct. A polite officer asked if I'd be willing to come in and give a full statement. I was already halfway into my car before he finished the sentence. I brought the spike strips wrapped in an old towel and tucked inside a reusable grocery bag, like they were radioactive fruitand. The camera footage backed up 3 different ways. I wasn't about to let some technical glitch ruin this dot at the station. The officer took everything seriously, which I appreciated. I half expected eye rolls or neighbor drama vibes, but no, he treated it like an actual crime, because it was an actual crime. Trespassing, vandalism, reckless endangerment. Apparently, Karen had stepped over several legal lines with a proud little skip in her step. She's denying everything, the officer told me, flipping through his notes. Says you're framing her. I almost laughed. Not the full belly kind, but the tired chuckle of someone who's been dealing with nonsense for way too long. So, I filmed myself getting her arrested for fun. I asked. The officer shrugged. She says the video is fake. Deep fake or something. Okay? Sure. Because clearly I have the time, resources, and CGI team required to create a lifelike 5 a.m. Karen sneaking montage. Maybe I'll add some explosions and call it fast and passive-aggressive. Thankfully, reality doesn't bend just because Karen says so. The footage was clear. The timestamps matched. My security system software logged the motion events down to the second. The spike strips had fingerprints. The officer said they were working on verifying that, which felt like polite cop speak, for we already did, but we have paperwork to finish. Meanwhile, back in the neighborhood, things got weirdly quiet. Nobody said anything to me directly, but you could feel the shift. Fewer people waved. Conversations paused when I walked by. It was like I'd become the guy who got the HOA vice president arrested, which, to be fair, I was. Greg from the board finally reached out again, this time in email form, probably hoping there'd be no recordable emotion involved. The message was 3 paragraphs of "We're taking this seriously," followed by a polite nudge asking if I'd be willing to resolve this matter amicably. It was phrased like I had just disputed a lawn trimming policy, not caught his golden goose laying spike strips like a Suburban Bond villain. I replied with a single line. This matter will be resolved by the legal system. I didn't hear from Greg again after that. Karen, meanwhile, had posted bail, of course. She was back in her house within 24 hours, pacing around her garden like a caged peacock. The HOA hadn't formally removed her from her position yet, which meant technically she was still allowed to send emails. So of course she did. The next HOA newsletter included a bizarre, passive-aggressive